Hello, my name is Christina O'Grady. I am finishing my fourth year of teaching science. My personal teaching philosophy embraces using evidence-based teaching strategies to provide my students with an individualized path to success. I include technology in my classroom to help pique their interest and develop my students' interest in science. Some of my other parts of my teaching philosophy are that I am self-motivated and I try to incorporate that and teach that to my students as well. And I use self-reflection a lot when I'm teaching. I like to look back over the lesson, see what may have worked well, what didn't work, and then try to improve on it. I also do a lot of reflecting on what my students are showing me that they have learned. I do this by looking over their end of the unit or end of the lesson quizzes and analyzing the questions to see which ones that they got wrong, the majority of the students got wrong, and then reteaching that information because that's telling me that I probably did not do a good enough job the first time through. The unit that I will be going over is for high school chemistry students. Typically, juniors and seniors are taking this class, although I have had some students as young as their sophomore year take the course. The unit explores the atom and the periodic table, two of my favorite topics to talk about in chemistry. I find the periodic table very interesting, and I like to teach that to my students and allow them to have that interest and just discover how completely interesting and unique the periodic table is. The unit starts with a history of the atom and some different models and theories. As scientists, still have not seen the atom, but we look at the way that the atom reacts, and that's how scientists develop models. And then it goes through different models, different ways, different information that we've learned about the atom. And it ends with the students developing their own model of the trends within the periodic table. It allows them a very hands-on approach. As we all know, students learn different ways. So it takes them through different ways of exploring the atom and then gives them that hand-on opportunity as well. It does address several of the physical science standards around atoms, the periodic table, and using models. And then one earth science standard around how to communicate their scientific information. So as they work through their assignments, they're able to really focus on that writing and how they want to communicate what they've learned to another person. So students are able to access the course through the online LMS, Learning Management System. Students have access to all of the information from the live class sessions. I do have it on the screen here. I'm going to switch over to the student view. So the students are able to see each lesson, and each lesson has a very similar feel. So this allows the students to have that consistency that allows them to work through the course and know what's expected of them each lesson. So each lesson has a typical format of the bell ringer, then the review activity. Then we have a video that kind of introduces the topic and tells them a little bit about what we're going to be learning. Then there's the PowerPoint, which goes over the content that we discussed during our live class session. So even the students that are taking the course asynchronously still have access to that same content. And then I like to include a brain break because at this point, they've absorbed a lot of information and I want them to have time to process that information, allow it to sink in before we continue on. After the brain break, we usually get into a class discussion, some of the things that you may have learned, some of the things that you still have questions about, and then it's the assessment part, whether that's a quiz or an assignment. Those are the typical parts and pieces within each lesson that you'll see as you go down through the course. This consistency allows the student and teacher to know what to expect with each lesson. And then students and teachers are both able to interact with one another through the learning management system and the different discussion boards that are sprinkled throughout the course. Students can interact with each other, and this allows them to interact even with the students who may be taking the course asynchronously, which is a really great feature. So even if they're not able to see each other during our live class sessions, they can still interact and be part of the class culture through these discussion boards. When I was putting together this unit, I did find that this learning management system is limited in its capabilities. The way that it's laid out is not ideal for my visual type of learning. It probably works for other people. The way that you build your module, then your lesson, and then indented are your lesson components. I prefer seeing them on probably the sidebar or a little bit differently than how it's laid out here. This can, in my opinion, get confusing and lead to maybe students not necessarily knowing the next thing that they're supposed to be working on. It would allow for a cleaner look if each lesson's components were able to be collapsed under the lesson, rather than just being able to collapse the module. So this is where I find that indent process a little bit lacking. The options available for creating content were limited as well. The way that the features for creating quizzes was a little bit confusing, but overall, it had the necessary element options, but there was nothing kind of innovative about the platform. Like I would have liked to have something a little bit more maybe interactive that allowed for more movable pieces maybe on the screen, just to catch the students' attention and to keep their attention. But it does allow for the necessary components, and it is sufficient for that. So I want to go over and talk about some of the specific things that I created that I think really tie into my core teaching philosophy about individualizing things for students and allowing for differentiation. So the first thing I want to talk about is those SEL breaks. So as you see here with lesson 1, there's a brain break. Oh, I have to allow the pop-up, which will take them to a YouTube video. This YouTube video is a fun video where they get to play this game once they skip the ads of would you rather. So would you rather do this or would you rather do that? It's a fun little video. It just gives them a brain break. It allows the student to realize that it's okay to step away for a minute and have some fun while you're learning. The next piece that I wanted to talk about was the lesson 1 assessment. As you can see here, I have a lesson 1 quiz as well as a lesson 1 assessment. The student has the option here to do whichever one they feel more comfortable with. If they feel more comfortable answering 4 multiple choice questions, they can go ahead and take the quiz. But if they're more of a creative type student or wanting to be more hands-on, they have the option of doing the lesson 1 assessment, which is drawing or building a model and then uploading that to this Dropbox. And then for those students who want to go above and beyond, there is the option to do both. So if they want to do both, they can earn bonus points by doing that. Another feature would be the PowerPoints that I've included within the lesson. So these PowerPoints allow the student access to the information that we talked about during class. It gives them the same PowerPoint and that same information that I went over during our live class session. So they can click on it, they can read through it, they can complete everything that we completed during class. The other thing is our bell ringers. So the bell ringers are a discussion board, and it just allows the students within the whole class, so synchronous or asynchronous, to answer a prompt and then go from there. It also has a rubric so that they can look at that rubric, they can download it, and see what they need to include in a good discussion prompt. It's the same rubric for all of them, and it does allow them just to have that consistency of the expectations, because each discussion board is also graded. And then finally, the last piece that I wanted to go into detail about was the last lessons assessment. This is where they get to work through a lab, and they get to look at this lab and build a 3D model of a specific trend within the periodic table. So they will choose a certain part of the periodic table. They'll create their 3D model, and then they'll go through the instructions here, and then they'll build their model, and then they can upload their completed model into the assessment. So some key takeaways are that students are able to pursue the course in a way that benefits them. They can either do it synchronously or asynchronously. And there's supports along the way for each student to be successful. As they go through those bell ringers, the teacher has access to help them if they may not be on the right path, to try to guide them back there. Although the learning management system is not as versatile as others I've worked with, it is adequate. It does have what's necessary to provide options for the individualized work for my students. That is my overview of this unit for chemistry. I hope that you enjoyed it.